Hello, welcome back to One More Mana. My name is Derik, and today we are getting into a deck tech. Now, I notice everything is naked behind me. Sorry for that. Yeah, just moved, basically just got a computer and a desk set up, so there will be nerdy things adorning me or my background very soon and have a whole setup. But there's just a deck I can't stop playing for the last couple months that I just feel the need to talk about, and if I keep talking about it to my cat and my girlfriend, there will be a mutiny and I will definitely be kicked out of the house, and I like this place, so I want to stay and I'm going to talk about it to y'all instead, and that is my Talrand Sky Summoner deck. Now, before we get into the specifics of this deck, do you want any cards in here, or maybe you want to pick up some Cavernous Souls and Boseiju so I can't counter your spells, head on over to TCG Player. TCG Player is phenomenal, and they'll have whatever it is you're looking for. I can't figure out what's in what pack at this point. I don't know, between collectors and sets. I can't follow it, but the people at TCG Player can, and if you go over there, you can find whatever specific variant of a card you're looking for. If you use the affiliate link down in the description below, you can help support the channel. In the process, we really do appreciate all the help. And speaking of supporting the channel, if you also want to support the channel, rock some Into the AM. And I know you all don't want to hear it from me, you want to hear it from Kennethy, the heathen himself. So Kennethy, why should everyone rock Into the AM? Well, hello, my name is Kennethy the Heathen, and if you know me, you know I love this Talrand Sky Summoner deck as we talk about drakes flying through the sky. But you know what's better, flyer, than flying through the sky? Flying through space. And if you want to be flyer, rock your Into the AM, because you know what they say, something about screaming in space and dripping. I'm gonna get emotional, because that is beautiful. Ken, you are a man of beautiful words and a beautiful man. It's a beautiful thing, so thank you. And for everybody out there, use the code that you see on screen to get a discount and help support the channel. In the process, it's gotta look good while you play, so thank you, and we really always do appreciate all the help. Now let's get into Talrand. Talrand is 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2 that makes 2/2 drakes. Whole lot of twos. It's a very simple card. Thankfully, you just cast, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you make a 2/2 drake with flying. Y'all know I'm a really big fan of the commanders that have more simple effects, where it's basically just do a thing, and I'm not a fan of the commanders that are full engines. I don't necessarily want a commander that's going to draw me cards and do my laundry and cook me breakfast and do all that type of stuff. I just want a cool effect to build off of, and Talrand is exactly that. I've been wanting to build Talrand for forever, because the cards that are redundant effects for him are some of my favorite cards really ever. Dose and Imperfection, I think, is one of the most perfect magic cards ever made, from art to the flavor of the Delver of Secrets line to the fact that it's a flip card, the spooky art, it makes spooky tokens. It's perfection. I absolutely love it. Shark Typhoon is another card that I love, and the fact that it also kind of does that same deal with making tokens, casting non-creatures. You got Rise from the Tides that reward you for playing instants and sorceries. It's really has been me wanting to play a spell based deck, an instant and sorcery based deck, without going into that spell slinger mode. I don't want to storm off, I don't want to combo off in that sense. I want to get cool benefits to playing instants and sorceries. I really see it much more as opposed to like a spell slinger type storm deck. It's going to be more of like almost like a creature based, like I look at Sidisi and I do the creature and graveyard based deck. It's a similar strategy to that, except instead of creatures, we're just going all in on instants and sorceries, trying to get as many benefits as we can. One of the cool things about Talrand is you can build it on a huge scale of power levels. You can do the fastest mana and the most powerful counter spells and make it cutthroat, or you can go light on counter spells, throw a bunch of cool cantrips and stuff in there. Don't worry about trying to speed them out, and play it as just kind of a casual blue token deck, and I love that flexibility. The biggest thing that held me back, because I wanted to play more of the token variation, has been in the past, there wasn't really necessarily the explosive token reward effects in blue that I felt like were necessary to allow you to have explosive wins. It felt very grindy and kind of a slow game, but there have been a couple cards printed in the last couple years that have changed that completely, and when we get into the game winning step, I'm going to talk about those in much more detail. But let's jump right into the categories to really talk about why I love this deck. Starting with the creatures, you're going to get your veggies in basically every category, and I'm not going to go into detail on these cards, but these are the cards that make the deck run. They're the cards that you're going to see basically in every deck list, and there's a reason for that. Typically, I am all in on just creativity, do what you want, but I highly recommend keeping any of the cards that either draw you cards on casting instants and sorceries like Archmage Emeritus, or if you have stuff that rewards for you for tokens coming in like a Kindred Discovery, or if you have stuff that rewards you for tokens connecting like Reconnaissance Mission. We have some of those in creatures, some of those in enchantments, some of those in artifacts. We have a wide variation. I would not cut those. We have a couple of those in the creature slot, and it really helps keep the deck going and keep the engine going to refill your hand and make sure you have all those cool instants and sorceries to cast. In the creature slot, you also have a couple really important redundant effects. Dose and Imperfection, I already talked about. One of the most perfect Magic cards ever printed. If it was a legendary, it would for sure be the commander of this deck, but alas, it has to be in the 99. And the other one, I would say Murmuring Mystic is probably if you're only going to pick two, probably the best other effect, where you cast an instant or sorcery, you get a 1/1 blue flyer. But I went with Whispering Wizard literally just because I love the Art of Spirit tokens. It's not great because you only trigger it once per turn, but I think the art on Whispering Wizard is super cool. The kind of the whole thing where it's like looking through like a Geist thing. And I just love Spirit tokens. So I went with that because of the cool tokens. But if you want to go for efficacy and how good it's going to be, I'd probably lean towards the Murmuring Mystic. Now, the next category is going to be the Sorceries. The Sorceries are such a varied card pool in this deck. And I feel like the Sorceries are the part where I talk about like heavily creature-based decks. You want all your cool like ramp and removal and stuff on creatures. You get that wide variety of effects in the Sorceries in this deck. We get stuff that is going to act as ramp, like Retraced Image or Mitotic Manipulation, that is really just going to give you a cool version of like land-based ramp in blue, which is just awesome. With the amount of islands in play that we play in this deck, you're probably going to get these to go off. Also, love having some of these Cypher effects. I'll put them up on screen now. I think we run 2 in the deck, and these are great because it lets you manipulate the board. And then when you connect with these Drakes and you can Cypher them on, you can then get more cast triggers and always have things to cast. So you have this like basically this recyclability of the spells that is just super awesome. You get some awesome card draw, whether it's more like kind of digging through your deck stuff like Chart a Course, or explosive stuff like Seagate Restoration, that you just draw a whole bunch of cards if everything's going well. We even have our board wipes in this category. As y'all know, I've talked about, I'm not the biggest fan of Cyclonic Rift. I just don't enjoy playing it. You play it against me, it's cool. Like, I have nothing against the card like that. I just don't enjoy playing it. Every time I play it, it feels like it just drags the game to a complete just slow slugfest, to a halt. It makes the game take so much longer, and most of the time it feels like when I'm casting that, I only want it to affect one person. It's like one person jumps out, they're going off, they're doing all their crazy stuff. I want to slow them down, and in the process, I set everyone back. And for me, at least, it feels like the person that was out ahead, that has this powerful deck, is just going to rebuild faster, and we're in the same position again. So I went with some... Blue has so many cool board wipes, just period. I went with Inundate that basically lets you just bounce all blue or non-blue creatures so you can keep your blue creatures behind, and that is just an awesome effect to have in here. And it's more targeted, so you can keep your stuff going, and even if you just reset all the creatures, people still have their artifacts and their enchantments, and it doesn't just bring the game to a complete halt. It resets what you need to reset, helps you survive, but doesn't just reset the game from ground zero, and I appreciate that. And obviously my favorite blue board wipe, just period, is going to be River's Rebuke. River's Rebuke is like one of my all-time favorite cards ever printed. I call it Petty Rift for a reason, because it is just Petty Rift. You're rifting one person. But the reason why I like it, beyond just being petty, is like I said, it feels like most games, one player is the one that's jumping out. There's usually a clear threat at the table, at least in the games I play, and it feels like there's always a huge threat at the table. And this allows you to take care of the clear threat without resetting everyone's board. You can take care of the huge threat that was about to win. They're naked. You can just go in, take care, try to knock them out, and progress the game. It feels like sometimes you rift and win, but so many times I see rift, it feels like it's just rift and you just start over. I feel like River's Rebuke helps more to progress the game and try to get the most threatening player out. Really appreciate that about it. And the last category in the Sorceries, I just talked about redundant commander effects and how important they are. We have some of those in here too. We have Irenicus's Vile Duplication, which is basically just Spark Double as a sorcery, so a dream for this deck. And as I mentioned, Rise from the Tides, that late game, if your commander's taxed out and you've been casting all these instants and sorceries, you can make an army of zombies in blue and really still have a chance to go off and win. And I love that about this card. But jumping into the instants are much different. The Sorceries have this huge variety of effects and all these cool like substitute effects for other card types. The instants are literally just your interaction and some of your cantrips. So you can have as many like Telling Time and Opt effects as you want to like look at the top card, all that type of stuff, brainstorm type effects, whatever it is that you want in the deck. Those are great in here. And then you have all of your counter spells and targeted removal. And this, like I mentioned earlier, is going to really dictate how powerful that deck is. If you want to make it a token deck, go much heavier into like the brainstorms and the Telling Times and the Ops and all those. And only run a handful of counter spells or targeted removal if that's what your play group wants. And you could just play it as a regular blue token deck. Now, if you're playing in a more powerful meta, and when you look at this deck list, I do play in a meta that plays a lot of powerful decks and spells, I wanted to find a happy medium while still playing a good amount of cantrips. I am running a lot of very, very powerful counter spells. Now, the way I like to use these, and I think this may help if your play group is very anti-counter spell, I typically like to use my counter spells defensively, and I'm trying to get better about doing this more and more, because I feel like if I'm sitting there trying to counter everyone's stuff and just like play like hall monitor for the game, no one's gonna like me. Everyone's gonna want me dead in the game, and they're gonna get annoyed every time I break this deck out. But if I just make sure to use those counter spells, either if someone's about to win and then the other two players are gonna be like, "Whoo, we like you just saved us," or if people are trying to remove your things, because it's much harder for someone to get mad at you if they are literally sitting there like, "I'm trying to destroy your stuff," and then you stop it. Like, bro, you came at me first. You gotta deserve for me to react in some way or respond in some way. So trying to use them defensively or only in emergency situations may open your play group up a little bit more. Definitely got to try it out, but I found that running counter spells like that will make it less salty and opens you up to have more interaction if you do find yourself in a more powerful pod at some point or another. So find your happy medium, and you do have that flexibility. It's another reason why I love the deck so much. Now, we're going to jump into the artifacts next. The artifacts, again, are going to really what determines the power level of the deck, and you have a huge amount of flexibility. If you're trying to go very powerful, you're going to go over to your nearest printer and print out some jeweled lotuses and mox things and mana crypts and all these things and try to race out your commander on turn 1 or 2 and then just go off like that and get drakes from an early start. Not really the speed I'm trying to play at. I want to have powerful interaction in this deck for the version I'm building so I can interact and keep myself alive, but I don't want to race out. I want my 3 mana counter spells. I want to run my heraldic banners and my midnight clocks, and one of my favorites is Strixhaven Stadium in this deck. I love having that slower ramp in this deck. I am not in a rush. I am trying to take my time and enjoy the game. So that's the way I went, but you can really tweak that to do what you want to do with it. There are a few artifacts I do want to kind of point out and pick out specifically that I've had a lot of fun with. I need to do a huge shout out to Dana Roach, because he's kind of one of the few Talrand players I've actually got to see their deck in action, and it seemed so much fun. But he has specifically talked about the card Rod of Absorption many times, and this card is insane. The first time I read it, I was like, okay, it seems decent, but every time I've played it, it's gotten like 3, 4, 5, 6 cards exiled underneath it, and it basically becomes a second hand. And yes, the table can see it and all this, but it is incredibly powerful, and especially as you get into the late game, if you just let cards collect under this, and you get a lot of mana available, you can have an incredibly explosive turn, cast a bunch of spells, get a bunch of drakes, and the coolest thing is, in mono blue, get effects you wouldn't otherwise have in that color restriction. So it is just an awesome and very, very fun card. There's another card called Veilstone Amulet that I love. I will say, if you go very counter spell heavy, this card might be a little redundant. The really purpose of this card is to turn your cantrips in 1 mana, like Brainstorm effects, into protection for your commander. So I honestly think the more casual your deck is, the less interactive it is. This card becomes increasingly more powerful, because if you have a bunch of counter spells in hand, it's a little redundant if someone goes to remove your commander and you counter it and then also give it hexproof. I guess it makes it protected for the rest of the turn. But anyway, I think it does become more powerful in more casual metas, but still a card I love and a card I really wanted in here. And the last one is a card that really makes me want to play mono blue, and I love cards that reward you for diving into monocolor, because I love monocolored decks, and that is Vidalcan Shackles. It's a super fun card, and as I mentioned, I play in a meta that plays a lot of really powerful cards, so getting to steal their stuff and use it against them, kind of show them what they're doing to me, makes me feel good. And yeah, one of my favorite cards in Commander. Now with the enchantments, you might notice, like, the first thing you might see is that Gravitational Shift actually isn't in there, and for a long time was a budget restriction for a lot of people, I think, but it does have a reprint recently. The thing about Gravitational Shift is it felt like a headache every time I played it. It felt like every time it was in play, someone would be swinging at someone and they'd be like, oh wait, everything is -2, -0, and then they have to stop and go back and redo it and redo math. Anything that really requires constant checking in, like Rhystic Studies and Smothering Tides, I just don't run those cards. They just feel like headaches to me. I've never played them, and like, woo, the game's more fun because of it. It's just always kind of a headache. Gravitational Shift kind of fit into a category where I kept feeling like it had to be checked in on. I may give it another chance at some point if I feel like I do need like the raw power of the card, but it is objectively a great card in the deck if you're looking for that. Instead, I went with Favorable Winds just to get kind of a base level buff for my creatures and not really mess with the rest of the board and make everything so confusing. Obviously, I already mentioned the veggies. You got Kindred Discovery, Reconnaissance Mission. If you want Coastal Piracy, it fit in there. These are just effects to have to keep the engine going, so definitely want those in there. Redundant commanders, we got Shark Typhoon, and the thing I love is we have redundant commanders in every category. Basically, we have them in creatures, got them in sorceries, and now we got them in the enchantments. Shark Typhoon is probably second best next to Docent of Perfection in my opinion, and as far as my favorite one to play. You can get big sharks, little sharks. You can channel it to get, or cycle it to get a big shark. Super, super fun card. The art's awesome. I love the secret layer version with like the VHS tape. It is just, oh, it's beautiful. It is just such a fun card. It's one of those cards you play it, you smile, and I'm never going to cut a card that makes me do that. So love Shark Typhoon in there. Now for the last enchantment you see on here, Overburden. Overburden is a card that you need to fit it to your play group. It is a very powerful and stacks like effect. Basically it says when a non-token creature enters, its controller bounces a land to their hand. I play in a meta again with some very powerful fast decks. So for me, this is the type of card I need to stay on pace. I kind of refuse to go the fast mana route. I don't want to up the speed of my game. So I'm kind of bringing everybody slowing down a little bit, slow it down a little bit. Make sure you're not dropping like 17 1-drops on turn 2 unless you want all your lands back in your hand. So I find it to be a cool effect. I would very highly recommend cutting it for Teferi's Veil if you are in a much more casual meta, because this is a miserable card to play against. Like straight up just will make your play group very annoyed with you if they're not playing at a speed that requires it. So Teferi's Veil is awesome because your creatures phase out after they attack, meaning it's like board wipe protection essentially. So if you're in a casual build and you're already going with less counter spells and less protection, Teferi's Veil becomes even better because then it protects your board without having to hold up counter spell mana or doing any of that type of stuff. So that is a swap I would very recommend if you're going harder on like casual tokens versus interacting with more powerful decks. But moving on to the lands are super simple. Love monocolored decks because of this. I'm running like 25 islands. You could honestly get that up to like 30. The islands are really all that matters in this deck. I would recommend, because it is monocolored, definitely dive into 2 to 3 land destruction effects. So whether it's Demolition Field or Strip Mine or Tectonic Edge, there are an increasingly number of broken lands in the format. And especially now I've noticed, because like in general, I feel like people have become a lot more proxy friendly. I wouldn't be surprised if you start running into more Gaia's Cradles and things like that, because people feel comfortable proxying them and don't want to spend like 3 months run on a piece of cardboard. So having these effects is so important. I am always regretting not running enough of these. If I find a game where someone drops that Sarah Sanctum or that Cradle, or even just something like the God Tree thing that gives all the lands to happen for all mana, there's always at least once a game where I'm like, I wish I had a Strip Mine out. So those are really all I recommend. Get those, bunch of basics, and you're honestly in a really, really good spot. The only other card that I think might be super useful in here is Riptide Laboratory, and that you can bounce your commander to protect it and get protection on a land for your commander. Really like that effect, but honestly, we have so many island reward cards in this deck too. The more islands, the better. And that's going to do it for all the categories. Let's get to the best part of every deck tech, in this case, the splashiest. And that's that game-winning step. How are we about to win the game with this deck? Well, the first way is going to be, obviously all the ways are going to be with Drakes, but the first way is with the card I like to call Strixhaven Stadium, because I guess that's what it's actually called. It's not one of the surprise cards, but I did want to talk about this as a potential game-winning card because of the fact that you can just make target player lose the game. If you have 10 2/2 Drakes, that's already 20 damage, you're probably already going to kill them. But if you're ever playing against life gain, or if you're playing against a deck that is doing something to where just raw damage is going to make it really difficult, this is a great alternate win con to have in here to be able to navigate through some of those tougher matchups. So really like what it does. And the second way to win the game in this deck is going to be through pumping all your Drakes and really doing like some sort of blue overrun. And with some cards that we've gotten the last couple years have made this possible. The first one is Alondra Sky Dreamer. It's a card in the new Jumpstart set that is just so cool. I assume it's Talrand's partner, sister, something going on. Bestie, I don't know, but they definitely get along in this deck because they complement each other so well. When you draw your second card, make a Drake, but more importantly, after you draw your fifth, her and all your Drakes get +X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. This card is absurd. You go from needing 10 to 15 Drakes to kill someone to probably 2 or 3, maybe less depending on the type of card draw spell you cast. It is absurd the work it can do. And it's also just kind of, by itself, it doesn't do a ton. When you put it out, if you don't have an army of Drakes, it might not seem super threatening. Like, what are the likelihood they're going to draw 5 cards? In this deck, it's pretty high. So, just an incredibly powerful card. And if you make it back to you with setup, you're probably going to kill at least one player with it. And the second one has a similar effect on you just taking out players, and it is Candlekeep Inspiration. A huge shout out again to Dana Roach for this one. I had not heard of this card, and when I heard him talk about it as a kind of a surprise overperformer, really inspired me to take a look back and really want to put this deck together. It's a card from, I want to say it was like from Strixhaven, somewhere around that time. I'd have to check, but wherever it was made, it was broken. It basically says all your instants and sorceries and adventure cards in your graveyard and in exile all your creatures become base power excess based on that number. That is just insane. The thing with most cards like this is it never includes exile. It's usually just your graveyard. So if someone exiles your graveyard, you draw this late, it's a waste. If you're delving cards away and you draw this, you wish you didn't delve them away. You feel so safe. You get cards in your graveyard, doesn't matter where they go, this is gonna buff things. And every time I've cast this, I've killed at least one player, even without a dominant board state. Most times you're just taking out everybody and winning the game. And these explosive effects really take this deck to the next level. That's gonna do it for this week's deck tip. I really hope y'all enjoyed it. This deck is super fun. I can't stop playing it. I keep playing it, keep trying to get upgrades for it. I'm really loving the fact that in today's EDH, with all the threats everywhere and how powerful and power crept a lot of stuff is, a deck like this with a lot of counter spells is almost welcome at the table sometimes to try to slow down some of the madness that's going on. Let me know, y'all, in the comments down below. Let me know how you feel about Talrand. Have you played Talrand? Do you like playing against Talrand? Or is this one of those that you're just going to kill on sight and not even let try to go off? You don't listen to what might be in the deck. You just know what could be there, and you're not letting that happen. As always, a huge shout out to the patrons. We love and appreciate y'all so much. Quick shout out, we will be officially in Philly for the MagicCon Philly. So let us know if you're going. Get at us on Twitter and all the good stuff. Let me know in the comments. Come get some games in with us. We cannot wait. We will all be there. Ken will be flipping tables, and me and Sed will be looking around like we don't know him. So come and hang out with us. We can't wait. So much exciting stuff to come. But for now, I will see y'all next time.